Hello everyone, this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 24th of August 2025, and this is where we go through the recent posts shared by others on our Facebook page. And the first post is from Much Spectrum, digital creator, a neurodivergent run storytelling studio advocating for empathy and inclusion. And what they've shared is about Tom Stoltman from Scotland, who's part of World's Strongest Man. And what it says is, from being bullied for being autistic to becoming World's Strongest Man, Tom Stoltman is redefining what strength looks like. He's not just lifting weights, he's lifting stigma. Diagnosed as autistic, Tom once struggled to leave the house. Now he's calling autism his superpower and using his platform to shift global perceptions. This post isn't about inspiration porn. It's about autistic pride, mental health, and how neurodivergent minds thrive when supported. Let's talk strength, the quiet kind, the focused kind, the kind that changes lives. And they've shared a presentation, and it says, meet the world's strongest man who calls autism his superpower. Scottish strongman Tom Stoltman isn't just a 2 times world champion. He's also autistic, and he says that's exactly what helps him win. While other athletes hype up the crowd, punch their chest, and yell before lifts, Tom stays calm, quiet, focused. I don't go out of first gear in qualifiers, he says. If I waste that energy, I'm drained before finals. Tom is 6 foot 8 inches, 190 kilos, and eats 10,000 calories a day. But 10 years ago, he hated the gym. He was bullied in school, felt ashamed of being autistic, and nearly gave up. I locked myself in my house. I was ready to end it all. It was his older brother who dragged him to the gym. Slowly lifting became routine. Then it became purpose. Then it became power. The gym saved me, Tom says. His hyper-focus, structure and tunnel vision, all linked to his autism, turned into his edge. In 2023, Tom nearly didn't make it to the World's Strongest Man finals. He had to win the most brutal event of all, a stone-off, lifting giant boulders over hurdle to one-man breaks. Tom didn't even flinch. They even called him the King of the Stones. Now he's gunning for a third world title, something only 2 men have ever done. But Tom doesn't want just trophies. I want to be an ambassador for people with autism, to change how people look at it. He regularly gets messages from kids, parents, adults in their 40s, all saying the same thing. You're calling autism a superpower changed my life. It doesn't mean life is easy. It means difference can be powerful. If you're unfamiliar with autism, Tom's advice is simple. Just ask, kindly. We don't get offended, we feel seen. That's all he ever wanted, and that's what he gives others.
I immediately felt prejudice, Harry, because I'm not very into sport in a big way. I mean, I'm into information about sport, but the practical side. So when I saw this initially, just image-wise, I thought, don't think this is my cup of tea. But the more I looked at the words and read it, then I got drawn in, because this is something else. This isn't just that kind of hyped up kind of sports phenomenon that surrounds us all the time. Highly commercialised, really loud, a lot of stuff I don't like. But this has got a message in it, this has got a reality, this has got a history, a life. It's brilliant. I like it.
I've never really been a big fan of the use of the word superpower, but I can see how it fits in this particular sort of scenario. I mean, it's impressive beyond impressive where he's come from and where he's gone to. And I really enjoyed that he said that he stays calm because he knows that he has to keep that energy up. And I think, yeah, this is kind of like him saying that he'll be drained. Like, we all have a bit of burnout, but if he overdid it, then he wouldn't be able to, be part of this. So, yeah, it's very impressive. I mean, although I don't like that word superpower when they attach it to it, because, this is something that's in him. It's not a superpower. It's just his power.
I agree with that sentiment about if there was a time when it was appropriate to fit it within the narrative, this is one of them. You know, it's used inappropriately in other places, and this seems to kind of work with the idea that it is a powerful person, it's a concentration thing, and it is something about his autism that makes him more powerful in his actual chosen sport. And I think it's interesting because I had the same kind of prejudices right from the beginning that Raymond discussed. Just looking at, oh no, it's sport, you know, but then seeing into it, and it felt really uplifting as being read.
And I quite like that we're not looking at the sport, we're looking at somebody just finding their focus and finding the thing that suits them, you know, the thing that makes their life, you know, good, and that gives them drive and gives them a bit of fight. So it's, yeah, I mean, I looked at it first and went, oh goodness, okay. But I can see that how this all ties in, you know, he's found his thing that kind of motivates him and makes him feel like he's got a purpose.
The next post is from Makers Devon, who are a non-profit organisation. Makers is a community interest company committed to neurodiversity, acceptance and inclusion. And in the picture itself that they've shared is Makers works with autistic, ADHD and AUDHD adults and young people without significant learning needs. We deliver neuro-affirming support one-to-one and in groups, mainly across Northern Devon in England and UK. Our short survey that they're sharing is all for you that have had the lived experience or are as an ally. What the post is sharing is quotes from different people regarding groups, etc. I've tried different things, but till now no one's really got how I experience the world differently. Another one says, I don't feel comfortable accessing groups. There seems to be too many social expectations that are uncomfortable for me. Another one says, I really benefit from having someone who recognises me for who I am, not who other people think I should be. So these are some of the things we've heard over the years, and we're still listening. As we consider our next group support, we want to know what you or your loved ones most need or want. What might that look like and offer you? So please respond to our short survey. If you're neurodivergent without significant learning needs, adult or young person, or you are the partner, friend, parent, or carer for a neurodivergent adult or young person, and the links are being provided. And the National Lottery Community Fund has supported this initiative.
My first reaction, Harry, is the phrase significant learning needs. It kind of threw me slightly because I then began thinking, well, why say that, you know? But then again, I understand why. But then again, do I? You know, so thinking about significant learning needs, you can have learning needs that are very variant, you know. A lot of us may seem to be quite able or capable, but we may have significant learning needs in the sense of our communication is difficult. And so when I see that phrase, I sometimes get this feel, and I'm not suggesting this group are suggesting this, but it seems to indicate or imply you're not trying hard enough.
I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to differentiate from a lot of services that are geared towards helping people with autism are linked to learning support. It's looking beyond that because sometimes things are all put the same sort of, label. And the survey itself, the introduction, is what it's called as a community listening exercise, understanding what matters to you and how to best deliver support. So help shape the future of support for autistic and neurodivergent people. We are Waymakers. We work to support opportunities and outcomes for autistic and AUDHD adults and young people aged 14 and up without significant learning needs. This includes those with and without a formal identification of their needs. This is a survey for people living in the North Devon Porridge area. It is for neurodivergent people without significant learning needs, autistic, ADHD, AUDHD, otherwise combination of neurodevelopmental differences and their allies. It's anonymous and it's designed to take no more than 10 minutes and most of it is multiple choice. And it's available in other formats and you can contact an email address to get that. You can fill in this survey yourself or with a support from a trusted person. Then it goes into the survey itself. So it's trying to be as accommodating as much as possible and trying to be as comforting as possible. Because as we all know, surveys, that sort of thing, certainly my experience, can be very draining, especially if you're describing yourself. So it's good that they're going to put this approach towards it and try to be as inclusive and supportive as possible. And having confidence that, basically pouring your heart out into this survey is actually going to make a difference, moving forward. Because as we've felt before, or many of us have felt before, is that we've told our life stories for a certain project, for certain people asking questions, questionnaires, etc., but then feel nothing comes from it. So you feel that you've poured your heart out for nothing. And that's why things become so difficult when working with organisations.
It looks to me as though part of this is about the same kind of space that we have for the 444, the drop-in, the self-help kind of area, the talk to each other, the networking. And I'm not going to have the opportunity to put my ideas down on this survey, so I'll put my ideas out there anyway. What helped me was being able to experience something without taking part, to be a fly on the wall in the background, watch over from the shadows, the grown-ups by the campfire, to understand what was going on, to use a metaphor, and then find my way in through text, and then after that maybe use my voice. And I found that in most spaces, however they worked, I didn't get those. What I got was in the glaring spotlight, this is something that you have to commit to, it's going to be on this day, and that didn't feel great for me. So the way for me to make sure that spaces are inclusive is to make so many different ways for people to approach them very slowly and gradually, without commitment and without sort of email communication, just ease of access, and also anonymously.
My first experience of a podcast was when I jumped in with both feet and spoke to somebody who didn't know anything about autism. And I got into that conversation with them and found myself sort of drowning because I found it so very difficult. It was like being in the glaring spotlight, having to tell somebody what this feels like, what it looks like from the inside was very difficult. So, it's nice to be able to listen and hear other people of us who have similar or even slightly different sort of ways than I've got. But when you're talking to somebody who's just doing a podcast about autism, sometimes it felt really quite scary. I didn't do very well. I was really embarrassed when I'd finished. But, so there are spaces that are safe and there's some that feel a little bit more edgy.
The next post is from Ketter, Autistic Educator, who is an educational consultant, an autistic educator with a passion for helping teachers and families support autistic children. And they shared the following. Sometimes I underestimate just how exhausting the week can be. I know teaching is tiring, and I know living in this world as an autistic person is tiring, and I know I tend to take on some extras, which is also tiring. And then I get to the weekend and feel just how tired I am, and I'm still kind of shocked. It shouldn't be this hard, right? But that feels shaming, like I've done something wrong. And maybe the wrong thing I've done is just not taking adequate care of myself throughout the week. But it helps to just acknowledge sometimes that it is hard. Whether it should or shouldn't be, it just is. And feeling exhausted by a job I love, a job I pour myself into, isn't the worst thing in the world. I dare say it's worth it. But I'm looking forward to figuring out how to do it without this level of overwhelm, if that day ever comes.
I wonder if the expectations of society, I think my daughter once described it to me as it's part of the capitalist world. I don't understand this still, but to feel, and this could be for any person of, just everybody on earth, to feel shame in needing downtime, to feel like you always must be productive, to take on more. I'm not saying she shouldn't be taking on. I'm saying she shouldn't feel shame, but it would be really hard not to in the world that we're living in.
I'm interested in that word shame. I went to the Neurodivergent conference in Glasgow, and there was a presentation there by a researcher, an autistic person, and they found a way of describing some of the most difficult things using the word shame, saying how shame had been put upon the population in various different ways. So I think there might be something of a theme around that word that we would do well to consider for ourselves and maybe let go of.
Productivity is a big thing, especially for me. It's like if I feel that I'm not producing or making an effort, so to speak, it's like there's this bad feeling that, you know, being stale or just feeling that you're not contributing. It took me a long time to accept downtime, to accept, you need rest and to just do things when you can. Because I've got a strange sleeping pattern. Sometimes generally I only sleep for a couple of hours, so sometimes that I'm up during times where other people are sleeping and doing things, and then if I feel that I've done something, it's that sort of satisfaction. A sort of societal sort of thing, like you must do things a certain way and you must produce or contribute in a certain way, because if you're not worthwhile. And I think that does kind of impact a lot of autistic people. And I think the other thing is the expectation is you want to, because you're good at something and a lot of the time you've got the energy to do something, you just feel bad if there's one day where you don't feel that you can do it. It's that sort of maybe perfectionism, maybe. It's that passion. There's a lot of things that come into it, and it can affect you psychologically. But there's ways of getting around it as well.
I feel as if there might be a shame upon shame. So she's talking about this productivity shame, which I address, but then I feel as if when you made your comment, Jules, you might have been talking about another layer of shame, which I think we do also have. I just have that feeling.
Yeah, I don't feel as though I'm prepared to run through all the ideas that went through my head listening to this particular person. So I tried to introduce it or magnify that word and wonder, and I think you're onto it as well, that yes, there are other layers of it, and it is put upon us, and it is societal manipulation and familial manipulation and capitalist manipulation. There are various aspects to it, and I think the autistic population is at the end of it to a greater degree than the general population. And I see that I have a feeling that these layers of shame end up in a contribution to our representatively large issues with mental health and eating disorders and suicide and crime rates and unusual behaviours. I believe that there are these that work upon us that maybe if we were more aware of them, we would be able to steel ourselves or bend with the wind and resist by allowing them to go past us or through us,
Like maybe there's a basic self-support education anyone can be given, whether they're neurodivergent or neurotypical, because we often assume the neurotypical society benefits neurotypically orientated people, whereas neurodivergent people may struggle, may be contrary, may fight against it, may also want to be a part of it, but struggle to know how to, because they have these different influences pulling at them. So maybe there is some kind of core self-support thing that should be prioritised for just anyone at a young age, so that when they begin to discover where they are oriented on a neurological level or whatever, or a self-identifying level, they can cope.
Yeah, you're actually talking about revolutionary education, like the different experiments that have been tried. Woodcraft folk and the Montessori, there's another group of educators that have a very natural, soft parenting, gentle parenting way around them, attached to nature. So, yeah, you might be talking about that kind of thing as an educational basis to give people that strength or resilience.
Same though that those cost a fortune. I'm not really into methods. I'm into just being open to the fact that we may be living a lie, in the sense of all the norms that are produced by our society and layered onto us as conditioning. Think about it, I can't actually prove any of them, and so I'd rather be a bit more open-minded about what's going on into possibilities rather than just working with, no, this is a fact. This is history. This is what's done. This is how it's done.
Yeah, I take your point. What you're saying is if it's an education system like Waldorf, somebody's put in the text there, or Steiner, then it's a certain class of people that get that education. What we really need is a kind of generalized understanding as people that it's kind of ranged against us the way things are organized. We've badly organized things for ourselves, and we need to open it up for everybody in a way. Utopia.
Well, not quite utopia. It's not that hard. I think we just need to be human beings.
Tells me that if you go back, not too far back in time, in smaller societies, not special societies, just smaller places, there was more room for people's energy levels, people's differences. It seems to me all of the people who really could see it in you and make that space for you, older people from smaller places.
The next post is from ICANN Network Limited, which is a non-profit organisation. ICANN Network Limited is Australia's largest autistic-led organisation. 50% of our team are autistic. We deliver group mentoring in schools and via online settings. We share our insights through talks and consultancy. And what they've shared is communication tips for school leaders. Being firm but fair with a growth mindset is key when working with families of neurodivergent students. Many parents feel their concerns are dismissed. Therefore, listening, validating and communicating clearly builds trust without being overly cautious. For instance, lead with inclusive stories. In newsletters, assemblies, parent-carer evenings and open nights, share the unique achievements of neurodivergent adults. This signals to all families, including those with undiagnosed students, that your school is a safe and supportive place and helps reduce fear around labels. Communicate change clearly. Neurodivergent students may process change differently, so make sure your messages reach everyone. Use multiple channels like web portals, digital and print newsletters, emails, and even informal chats in the schoolyard to ensure important information gets through. Clear, inclusive, and multi-channel communication builds stronger connections with families and support every student's access. Student success. Resource is part of the Victorian Department of Education's funded expansion of ICANN to all the Victorian government schools.
This thing about communicating with parents is going to come up with the project with the behavioural services people, because they are contacting parents in that.
I agree with GR. Then look at this and use it and reassign it and repackage it to make it clear in the project with the PBS group on how they should perhaps communicate some of the messages that for us we have difficulty with. I think GR's onto something.
Myself into the headspace of me when I was very young and at school, and I'm looking at this and thinking so much of this is just basic. That would actually suit everybody, really, wouldn't it? If everything was just so clear and straightforward and you knew all the rules, they could sort of adjust being kind sort of environment. Because there are people even in a normal mainstream school who are going to be getting used to change or slower. It's kind of like a bit of a template for everybody in a sort of a way, and one of which I would have been very grateful for when I was sort of 6 years old and sitting in a classroom feeling bewildered.
I wonder where it says when dealing with parents, don't be really cautious. If you have to be cautious because you could actually infer that the child's behaviour is the parent's fault. It's not a one-line solution for this sort of thing.
I'm wondering if the operative word there is overly cautious, because I'm fairly sure the teaching professions are already cautious about how they describe children to their parents. What I was trying to say is actually have the conversation, actually have some communication, and don't avoid it by being overly cautious and stop that communication happening.
Thanks everyone. That's us coming to the end of the broadcast. So thanks for everyone being involved tonight. And thanks to the people who shared those posts that brought out these interesting topics. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 24th of August 2025, which is part of the 555 Spectrum Voices conversation, which is broadcast every Sunday from 5:55 PM to 7:30 PM UK time. And I look forward to the next one.